Hi everyone, we're going to go over our midterm review, or at least the first one. So let's go ahead and get started. So number one, the temperature outside increased by 3.5 degrees every hour from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. At 6, the temperature was -5 degrees. What is the temperature at 10? So let's go ahead and reread it and circle important information. So the temperature outside increased. That's going to be an important word for us. Increased means add, right, or go up by 3.5 degrees every hour from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Okay? So the things that we know that from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. equals 4 hours. And we know that it increased 3.5 each hour. We also know that at 6 a.m. the temperature was at -5 degrees. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to figure out how much did the temperature increase between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So I'm going to take 3.5 and I'm going to multiply it by the number of hours. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry my 2. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. I have one decimal place, so I need to move my decimal 1 to the left. So in those 4 hours, it increased 14 degrees. But it tells me that it started at -5 degrees. So if it started at -5 degrees and it increased 14 degrees, I need to add those two numbers together. So now we have to think back all the way to August and September. We have to remember our integer rules. So when I'm adding integers, okay, I have to look at the two signs. So I have a negative and a positive. My signs are different, so that means I subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So 14 minus 5 is 9, and I have more positive counters than I do negative counters. So my answer is 9 degrees. All right, number 2. What is the value of the expression? I have a -21 divided by a positive 3.5. So if we remember our integer rules from adding and subtracting, I'm going to have plus mountain. Okay. So I have a negative, so I'm going to cover up my negative, and I have a positive, so that means my answer is going to be negative. So we already know that from before we even do any division, multiplication, whatever the question is asking for, I already know that my answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to divide 21 by 3.5. Now remember, you cannot have a decimal in your divisor, so I'm going to move it 1 to the left. Now that we've gotten rid of that decimal, I can go ahead and divide. 35 can't go into 2, can't go into 21, but it can go into 210. I'm going to go ahead and this is where you have to guess and check. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 3 is 21. So 35 can go into 210 6 times. But we can't forget our negative. So my answer is -6. Remember, you can always pause and go back and re-listen if you need a little bit extra time. Number 3, classify the following numbers below into their most specific classification. So 0 is a whole number. -13 over 1. It looks like a fraction, but if we did 13 divided by 1, we would just get 13. So -13 over 1 is actually an integer. 13 over positive 13 over 1, again, it looks like a fraction, but it's not, or it is a fraction, but when you divide that out, it's actually a positive 13. So that's actually a natural number. Remember, our natural numbers are your counting numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whole numbers are all the natural numbers, including 0. Integers are positive and negative, counting numbers. And then rational numbers are your fractions and decimals. So negative 3.25 is rational. Number 4, draw a number line that best represents the solution to the inequality. So I'm going to draw my line down my inequality. Remember, that helps me stay balanced. Whatever I do to one side of the line, I have to do to the other side of the line. So this is a two-step inequality. So I want to get rid of the subtraction first. So the way that I get rid of minus 9 is I add 9. So I'm left with 4x. Over here, my signs are different, so I have to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So 18 minus 9 is 9. And I have more negative counters than I do positive, so it's negative 9. The way that I get rid of the 4 is by division, because we know that a number right next to a letter is saying that those two things are multiplied. So when I want to do the opposite of multiplication, that would be division. Okay? So it looks like I have a negative 9 divided by a positive 4. So it's the same thing as number 2. I'm going to cover up my negative, cover up my positive, which means my answer is going to be negative. Before I do any division, 4 can go into 9 2 times. Subtract 8, get 1. I don't have a remainder of 0, so I have to add a decimal and a 0 and bring that down. 4 can go into 10 2 times. I still don't have a remainder of 0, so I have to bring down another one. 4 can go into 20 5 times. I subtract. There we go. So I have x, and I have negative 2.25. We can't forget that. And then remember, whenever you're dealing with inequalities, you have one more step that you have to do at the end. And that step, remember, is if you multiplied or divided by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. The number that we divided by was a positive 4, so we did not divide by a negative number, so our inequality sign stays the same. Now, to graph this, I have negative 2.25. I'm going to put a circle on that. Now, to determine if your circle is open, like it is here, or shaded in, you have to look at what's below the inequality sign. On this one, I do not have an equal to. I don't have that little line underneath, which means my circle stays open. And because my x is on the correct side of the inequality sign, I look at my inequality sign, and it kind of looks like an arrow, which means the arrow is pointing to the left. So that means I am shading to the left. So that is how you graph an inequality. Number 5, Mr. Orange is taking his children and their friends to Six Flags. He will pay $50 for his adult ticket and $40 each for his child ticket. Mr. Orange spends $296 on tickets. Write and solve an equation to determine the number of child tickets Mr. Orange purchases. So on this one, we want to find the variable. We want to write an equation, and then we're going to solve. Where we find our variable, it comes from the question. So let's go back down and look at our question. Write and solve an equation to determine the number of child tickets Mr. Orange purchases. So my variable is the number of child tickets. That can always be found in the question. So my equation here, I'm going to read from the start. He will pay $56 for his adult ticket. So he only is getting one adult ticket, so that's $56. And so plus $40 each. Now remember, anytime we see the word each or per, that's where the variable goes. That's where the x goes. So in this case, the x is going to be attached to 40. And then Mr. Orange spends $296. So for the $56 and all the children's tickets, that's going to equal $296. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve. I'm going to draw my line. I want to get rid of the number that's not connected to the x first. So minus 56. So I'm left with 40x. 296 minus 56 is 240. Divide by 40. I have a 0 at at the end of both numbers, so I can mark it out. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. So Mr. Orange bought 6 child tickets. All right, number 6. All we're doing is solving, so I'm going to draw my line. I want to get rid of the 14 first. I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. I'm left with a negative 4x. Got to borrow. 10 minus 4 is 6. 5 minus 1 is 4. Got to divide by negative 4. Going to draw a plus mountain here. I have a positive 46 and a negative 4, so my answer is going to be negative automatically. So I need to go ahead and divide this. I can do it right here. 4 can go into 4 one time. Bring down my 6. 4 can go into 6 one time. I don't have a remainder of 0. Oops, sorry about that. So I have to add a decimal and a 0. 4 can go into 20 5 times. So my answer is x equals, can't forget my negative, negative 11.5. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to number 7. Number 7 says the University of Texas accepts 8 students for every 100 applicants. How many students will be accepted if 2,950 apply? So we need to set up a proportion. The two things that we're talking about are students who are accepted and students who apply. So my first ratio comes from my first sentence, 8 students for every 100 applicants. So 8 over 100. My second ratio comes from my question, how many students will be accepted? So I don't know the number of students who are accepted if 2,950 apply. I can't scale, so I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. So this is 100x equals, so I need to do 2,950 times 8. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 9 is 72, plus 4 is 76. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 7 is 23. So my equation is 100x equals 23,600. So to solve for x, I'm going to divide by 100. And we're back, we have our little trick here. I notice that there are 2 zeros at the end here and 2 zeros after 100, so I can mark them out. So I'm left with 236 over 1, and we know that anything over 1 is just the numerator. So 236 divided by 1 is 236. So the number of students who are accepted is 236. Number 8. Johnny pays $42.48 for 9 pounds of steak. What is the price per pound? So on this one, anytime that you see price per pound, price per ounce, miles per gallon, we're trying to find the unit rate. So I'm going to divide the money by the number of pounds. I'm going to bring my decimal to the top. 9 can go into 42 4 times. 9 times 4 is 36, so I'm going to subtract. I'm going to borrow. 12 minus 6 is 6. Bring down my 4. 9 can go into 64. 7 times, that's 63. Subtract and get 1. Bring down my 8. 9 can go into 18. 2 times. So, for the price of 1 pound of steak, it's $4.72. All right, number 9. We've been doing a lot of these lately. The manager of a t-shirt company recorded the number of customers who bought a red shirt or a blue shirt during 1 hour and classified them by age. The results are shown in the table. What percentage of all customers bought a blue shirt during the hour? So the first thing that I need to do is I need to add up all of the customers who came in throughout that hour. So 8 people bought a red shirt, and then 8 plus 9 is 17. So 17 people bought a blue shirt. Okay, so to find the total, I'm going to add 8 and 17, and that equals 25. So now I'm going to set up my percent proportion. So percent over 100 equals part over whole. Now I'm going to fill that in. I don't know the percent. That's what I'm trying to find. Okay, I'm trying to find the percent of blue shirts, so 17 would be the part. And then the whole is the total number of customers. So there's my proportion. I'm going to see if I can scale here. I can. 25 times 4 is 100. And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. 7 times 4 is 28. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. So 68% of all customers bought a blue shirt. All right, number 10. The table below shows the relationship between the number of miles traveled, so Y, and X, the number of gallons of gas. Which of the following represents the best, which of the following representations best represent the number of miles traveled, Y, and the number of gallons gas used, X? Choose 2. So just looking at our answer choices, it looks like I have A and B have to do with the equation, and C and D have to do with K, the constant of proportionality. So we're going to have to solve kind of 2 different things here. The first thing that we should do is solve for K. So remember, K equals Y over X. So you have to choose, okay, one column. And I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. My Y value of the column that I chose was 228. So that goes on top. And X is 3. So does that match an answer choice? K equals 3 over 28? No. K equals 228 over 3. Yes. Okay. Now, to solve, if we look at Y, or if we look at A and B, we have to actually solve for K. So I'm going to divide 228 by 3. 3 can go into 22 7 times. Subtracting it 1. Bring down my 8. 3 can go into 18 6 times. So K equals 76. If we think back to this unit, my equation is Y equals KX. So 76 is just going to be plugged in for K. So Y equals 76X. Does that match any answer choice? It sure does. A. So your 2 answer choices, or your 2 correct answers for number 10 are A and D. Remember, go ahead and pause if you need to. If not, we're going to go ahead and move on. A YouTube video increases in number of viewers at a rate of 50 viewers each minute. Create a table and graph that represents the relationship between Y, the number of viewers, and X, the number of minutes. So if I look at my graph, the X here is number of minutes, and my Y is the number of viewers. So I know for every 1 minute, the viewers increase by 50. So 2 minutes, 100, 3 minutes, 150, 4 minutes, 200. So let's go ahead and make that in our graph. 150 to 100. So if we see here, we have a very steep graph. It goes through the origin, so this is proportional. All right, number 12. Karen started collecting baseball cards. Whoopsies, typo on my part. Her uncle gave her 110 cards to start. That's important. Each month, she will add 30 cards to her collection. Man, I just messed up, didn't I? Write an equation that can be used to find y, the total number of cards in Karen's collection after X months. So I'm going to start with y. If I look at my two numbers, I see 110 and I see 30. So let's go ahead and read that again. Her uncle gave her 110 cards to start. So that's what she started with. Each month, she will add 30 cards to her collection. So the word each goes with 30. So I have 30x plus 110. You could also do y equals 110 plus 30x. Both of those are correct answers. All right, number 13. 1 mile is equal to about 1.6 kilometers. If the distance between two cities is 4 kilometers, how many miles apart are the two cities? So we're going to set up a proportion. My two categories are miles and kilometers. So my first ratio comes from my first sentence, so 1 over 1.6. And then the distance between the two cities is 4 kilometers, so that goes down on the bottom, and I'm trying to find the number of miles. So I'm going to cross multiply. So 1.6x, equals 4. Divide by 1.6. Four goes on the inside, 1.6 on the outside. I have a decimal on my divisor, so I have to move it 1 to the right to get rid of it and add my 0. 16 can go into 40 2 times. 16 times 2 is 32. Subtract and get 8. I don't have a remainder of 0, so I have to add a 0 and bring it down. 16 can go into 80 5 times. 16 times 5 is 80. Now, I'm not guessing and checking for the sake of time, but if you don't know that 16 can go into 85 times, you can guess and check that. So, it is 2.5 miles. All right, number 14. This is the latest thing we've been doing. Trapezoid ABCD is similar to trapezoid QRST. So if we look here, ABCD, QRST. So not only are they similar, they are rotated in the same way, which makes it really simple for us because it's really simple to find corresponding lines whenever they are rotated the same way. So A and D corresponds to QT, and then BC corresponds to RS. So I'm going to do 2.8 over 1.7. So I did pink over yellow. So I need to do pink over yellow. So X over 5.1. I'm going to cross multiply. So that is 1.7x equals, I need to do 5.1 times 2.8. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 0. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Add those up. I have two places after the decimal, so I need to move it 1, 2. So it's 14.28. I'm going to divide by 1.7. I'm really running out of room here. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you know how to divide this by now. X equals 8.4 meters. All right, number 15. The campus secretary reports that there are 480 upperclassmen enrolled at Lee High School. This represents 64% of the student body. How many students are enrolled? So I have a percent proportion. Okay, so my percent is 64% over 100. My part is 480, and I'm trying to find the total number of students enrolled. I'm going to cross multiply. 64x equals, remember whenever you're multiplying by 100, all you have to do is add those two zeros to the end. So I have 480 and then those two extra zeros. I'm going to divide by 64. '64 can't go into 4 or 48, but it can go into 480 7 times. 64 times 7 is 448. When I subtract that, I get 32. Bring down my 0. 64 can go into 320 5 times, exactly. Bring down my last 0. 64 can go into 0 0 times. So the total number of students enrolled are 750 students. And that's all for our first midterm review. I will be making a second video for our second midterm review coming soon.